Hi, I'm Jennifer with Olympia Piano, and I've been having so much fun creating this adult all-in-one course, step-by-step tutorial for the membership here on my channel, Olympia Piano. And some of my wonderful members have written to me suggesting that I do a short video kind of like a trial lesson so you can see if my teaching style matches your learning style. So what I've done is I've taken some clips on basic concepts from one of the first 25 lessons and just put them in order here. You can take a look at the description and skip ahead to any of these lessons. These are found in the lessons that I've already published in the membership. You'll see the page number I'm referring to. So if you have the book, you can just open to that page and follow along. So let's get started. So I'm going to start finding my nice hand position. My wrist is a little bit under. I'm going to stand up till I find my fingers gripping the keys. See my thumbs up here at the edge, pinkies also at the edge, and then these are a little semicircle here in the middle. If you remember from the intro, the letters of the scales go in alphabetical order from wherever they start. So C, D, E, F, G. Letters that are next door are going to be keys that are next door. Okay? I'd like to just show you how I break down the note values to my students because it seems to work really well. So if you imagine, here is a measure, okay? Measure, and that equals 4 beats. So if we cut that circle in half, we get 2 notes that are 2 beats each. These are called half notes. So we can take those notes and then divide those into a shorter duration. So each half note would be equal to what's called a quarter note. And quarter notes are filled in, half notes are not. So quarter notes get 1 beat and half notes get 2. So all the total always adds up to 4. And just so you know, we'll cover it later, but there is a note called a whole note that gets 4 beats. There can be all sorts of combinations with 4 beats. Right now we're going to just deal with combinations that are quarter notes and half notes. Remember that as we go next door on the piano, the notes go next door, like you're walking up the stairs on the music staff. One thing I'd like to show you, which I didn't show you in the previous video, which might be helpful to some of you who are visual learners, is that the staff actually lines up really nicely with the keyboard if you put it sideways. So let me show you that. Now I've turned my treble staff to the side. What I want you to see is that these lines correspond to the keys. So if I have this E right here, this line is going to go to that E. Then the F next door and the G, middle C, have to draw their own line. See what I mean? So every other line will correspond with every other key. If you're this type of learner, you can use this to find your notes. If you know where middle C is, then you can count the line sideways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and find any of the notes that way. All right, let's go back to normal clef here. So the next thing we're going to talk about is something very important. It's called the time signature, and this has to do with how we count the piece. So let me pull up my 4/4 time signature. That's what we're going to learn about today. So I'm talking about these 2 numbers here. So the top number means we're going to count to 4. And when we get to the measure line, which is this line here, it's called a measure line or also called a bar line, probably more common called a bar line. Then we restart counting again after that bar line. All right? Now the bottom number, and it has the same purpose whether or not it's in treble or bass clef, that tells us what type of note gets the beat. So if it's the number 4, it's a quarter note. So when we see this information at the beginning of a piece, we're going to count to 4, restart the counting after the bar line, and if we have a quarter note, that's going to get 1 beat. Now, in previous lessons, we have already learned about whole notes, half notes, and quarter notes. So what I want to reinforce is the relative durations of all of them. So in this case, we have 4/4, so we're going to be counting to 4 every measure. In every measure, we could have one whole note, 4 counts. We could have 2 half notes. We could have 4 quarter notes, or any sort of combination of those. So we could also have this, or we could have. So the point being, when you're in 4/4 time, once you run out of those 4 beats, then you've got to restart in the next measure. The next piece is called Mexican Hat Dance. In this piece, we have the new concept. And so the new concept is what's called a quarter rest. I'm going to talk about this in the context of 4/4 time, all right? So in 4/4 time, we have whole notes, which equal 4 counts, and could also have a whole rest. Remember, the whole rest has the double meaning. It can either be 4 counts or whole measure of rest. Then, in 4/4 time, the half note equals 2 beats, and we haven't learned this, but I'm just going to show you. You can learn it very soon. Half rests, the opposite, and I remember this because it's like he has a little hat on, okay? And then we've got quarter note, which gets 1 count, and the rest kind of looks like a fancy Z, like that. And you're going to see that on beat 4 of measures 1, 2, and 4. So you would count the rest exactly like you'd count the note. You're just not going to play on it. So you know how we've been holding our hands down for the half notes, 1, 2. If we had a quarter note plus a quarter rest, we'd go 1, 2, and we'd lift on it. Let me draw measure 5 here. We have a. That's how it works. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Hands do not stay together on the rest. So now we've got half notes, 2 counts. We've got quarter notes, 1 count. We've got quarter rests, 1 count. And we've got whole notes. And then we also have the whole rest, which has a double purpose in this particular piece. It's a full measure of rest, but it also works out to 4 counts of rest. So now you're dealing with 5 different things. So what I'd like to do is let's just go over and clap the rhythm first. I'm going to sketch it out here because it's the same for melodic intervals. So let's just jump right in. I'm going to read from the book. Distances between tones are measured in intervals. So just look at the bottom keyboard here. All of these are intervals. This is a second, this is a fifth. They're just distances from the notes. And something that can be confusing when you're first learning about intervals is that you have to use the bottom note when you're counting the intervals. So what I mean is, we're doing a second, 1, 2, that's a second. If we're doing a fifth, we're going to count that bottom note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes people will just count up and go 1, 2, 3, 4 and think that's a fourth, but you have to count the first one, all right? So the book indicates when you play the notes separately, they make a melody. So if I played C to D one at a time, I could say C, D, but if I played them at the same time, that's called a harmonic interval because it's making a harmony, all right? So melodic, you could actually sing it. Harmonic, you'd need 2 people to sing it. So here are some both melodic and harmonic seconds and thirds. And so I'm going to circle all the melodics first. These are the melodics one at a time. We could sing that melody. And I just want you to note the difference between the seconds and thirds. Second is line to space, third line to line. In the bass clef, we've got space to line and space to space. So seconds are opposite and thirds are the same. Okay? Okay, so now let's look at all the harmonic intervals. And here's our harmonic second, here's our harmonic third, second, and third. So the thing that's sometimes confusing when you're first starting the piano is this harmonic second, how the notes are placed. They're kind of left and right, so it kind of looks like you would play, but that's the only way that they can draw it, harmonically speaking. So one of those notes is going to be on the left and the other is going to be on the right. So it is actually played at the same time, like that. And the thirds stack up really nicely on top of each other. So those are easy to see that they're the thirds. So with the seconds, make sure to just play them at the same time. After going through that with the finger numbers, I'm going to suggest a practice technique for you. What I suggest you do is take the end of line 1, where you have Jingle All the Way. Take that measure 4 times right hand alone, and then for 3 more times add the left hand. So 5 times you're going to go. If you know the other rhythm, you can do that. It's fine. So you do 4 of those, and then you add your left hand for 3 more times. Okay? But lines 2 and 4, because they're more unfamiliar and they're trickier to work out the fingerings, do them 5 times right hand alone. So line 2, 5 times alone, then add the left hand 5 more times. Last 2 measures of the piece, line 4, last 2 measures, same thing. 5 times, just right hand. No third finger in that. 5 times like that, and then add the left hand, because there's a lot going on. We have half notes for the first time in the left hand here. And then, just to glue it together, take the last note of the measure before. So, before a 1 horse, start with the third finger. So get that in your fingers before doing the final playthrough. Frequently used chords are C major and G7. This is where you're going to have an extra theory lesson on what is a G7. I gave you a hint of that in the last lesson. Now we're going to look at the bass clef and do the same thing. All right, so in the last lesson, I talked about how if you use the notes of the scale, certain harmonies are created just by using those notes, okay? So if we start with C, E, G, that harmony is called the 1 chord, and in this case, it's a C major chord. Then if I march up the scale using those notes, the C scale, my 2 chord is going to be minor. Lowercase means minor in this notation. Moving up, E minor, 3 chord. Moving up, 4th note of the scale creates the 4 chord, and that's F major. And then finally, we get to the 5th note of the scale, and that is called the 5 chord right here. So in this case, it's a G chord. A strong resolution in music is 5 to 1. So sometimes composers make this even stronger by adding another note to it. So if you can see here, to create these chords, we're just stacking thirds on top of each other. So we're going to stack another one to make a 4-note chord, and that is an F. The outside interval of that chord is a 7. So that's why it's called a 5-7. Now, this particular inversion of the chord is pretty spread out. So usually what we do is we take these same notes of the chord and we put them in different positions. So now if I go to here, I'm going to put this top note on the bottom. So we're going to have an F on the bottom. Same notes, F, G, B, D. And then I'll go to the next one. I'm going to put this D on the bottom. That's this one. And I'm going to do it one more time. Put the B on the bottom. And there's that B that we just learned is the bottom note of this G7 chord. Often what happens is instead of using all 4 notes, composers leave out this note right here, the D, because that's a 5th when you have the chord by itself. And when we change the quality of the chord, the 5th doesn't give us any new information. So we often leave it out. Plus, it makes it easier to just have 3 notes in a chord often. So that's what we're going to use for that G7. The notes are B, F, and G. I hope you found those sample lessons helpful. And if my teaching style matches your learning style, I would absolutely love to have you in the membership group. The instruction as to how to join the membership is in the description. I will say it is a little bit easier to join it on the computer, but it is also possible to join on a tablet or a phone. There's just a couple of extra steps because of how YouTube is set up on the non-computer devices. Just write me an email if you have any problems whatsoever, and I hope to see you in the course. Thank you for watching.